Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening? Good morning, everybody. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Today is Friday, January 20th, 2023. We got a lot of news to talk about in today's video. I think the biggest piece of news is it just came out that Google is laying off 12,000 workers. That's right. Google is laying off 6% of their workforce. Think about how bad things have to be if a company like Google is laying people off. We got a bunch of other stuff to talk about today. We got more layoffs to discuss. CNN says the party is over. What are you doing here? Party City, the largest U.S. party supply store, has just filed for bankruptcy. We had several people at the Fed come out and say that they're not going to waver on bringing down rates. Another person at the Fed said rates need to rise more to cool inflation. Jamie Dimon saying rates will go over 6% because there's still a lot of inflation to cool. This narrative that the Fed is going to pivot is just false. It's incorrect, and it's not going to happen. We got a lot of news to cover in today's video. I'm going to try to move through this stuff pretty quickly. I don't got a ton of time to make the video today. And I got home late last night. I had a volleyball game last night. So a little bit unprepared for today's video, but let's get on into this. Before we get started, shout out to today's sponsor, QuickFixSynthetic.com. Check out QuickFix and their 6.3 Quick Fix kit. It comes with 2 ounces of synthetic urine that does contain urea, making sure you pass your test. It also comes with a heating pad, a temperature strip, and other accessories to help you pass your urine test. And if you have a hair follicle test or a mouth swab test, don't worry. They also have a mouthwash as well as a shampoo that will help you pass those tests as well. Quick Fix Synthetic offers fast shipping and offers a 100% customer guarantee. So check out the link in the description box below, QuickFixSynthetic.com. Also, I am starting to take on some sponsors for the channel. If you want your company mentioned in a video, I offer really reasonable rates. I mean, literally, I'm talking for less than the cost of a meal out at Bennigan's or Ruby Tuesdays or TGI Fridays. You can get a little ad spot at the beginning of one of our videos. You know, I actually work with a number of different brands. I manage their affiliate programs. I also work with influencers. I see some of the insane prices that influencers want for a sponsorship or a shout out on a video. Most influencers are not influencers. They're broadcasters. I don't consider myself an influencer. I don't think any company is necessarily going to earn cool points for being associated with me. And I think that's kind of the main difference between influencers and broadcasters. But if you have a company, if you have a brand, if you have a product, you have a website that you want to promote, reach out to me, RulesForRebels@gmail.com. And I think you'll be surprised how reasonable my rates are. So feel free to reach out. Let's get into today's news. So Google is laying off 12,000 workers. That is 6% of their total workforce. And if you think things are bad. Things are bad if Google, of all companies, is laying people off. As I mentioned earlier, as typically happens when a company lays off employees, it shows that they're serious about cutting costs. It shows that they're serious about profitability. It's good for the company, bad for the workers. But what does this say about our overall economy that even a company like Google is laying off workers? The CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, said that a difficult decision had to be made to set us up for the future. He said, in the past 2 years, we've seen dramatic growth. We hired for a different economic reality than we have today. So what does Google see that you don't? What does Google know that you don't know? The employees laid off from Google will get 16 weeks of severance, plus 2 weeks for every additional year, and they'll also be paid out on unused vacation time, unlike Microsoft. When Microsoft did their 10,000 layoffs the other week, Microsoft had actually, prior to that, about a week prior to that, decided to switch to unlimited vacation, which was kind of a weird move. But after seeing the layoffs, we know that the reason that they did that was so that they wouldn't have to pay people out on their unused vacation time. And there's another kind of narrative, false narrative, in my opinion, that's going around. People seem to think, oh, big deal, these tech workers are getting laid off. They have an in-demand skill, and they'll be able to get a high-paying job like nothing. I think in my video the other day where I talked about the Microsoft layoffs, somebody made this comment. They said, big deal, they're going to have a job by next week. And I said, who's going to hire them? Look at all these tech layoffs happening. Look at all the tech companies who have hiring freezes going on right now. Who's going to hire these people? And I saw a similar discussion, and I think my man Brian Phobos chimed in and said the same thing. By the way, check out Brian Phobos' channel. He's been putting out some videos recently. But Brian Phobos said the same thing. I know in some of Brian Phobos' videos, he was out in California. He was trying to find tech jobs, and he said there wasn't a whole lot out there. I saw there was a post on the Reddit real estate forum the other day, And somebody had posted a story about all these tech layoffs, and people were saying the same thing. Oh, big deal. These people will be able to get another job in a week. And when people would bring up, like, look at all the tech layoffs, you guys maybe know better than I do if this is true or not, but kind of the narrative that people were spinning was, okay, you know, maybe the big social media companies and the big tech companies that you've heard of or that are constantly in the news, maybe these companies are laying people off, but there's plenty of companies in healthcare and other industries that also need coders, programmers, you know, tech workers, etc. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I'm not really sure. But we are starting to see, you know, these layoffs aren't limited to tech. Law firms are laying people off. Hospitals are laying people off. Healthcare companies are laying people off. So the idea that all these tech workers who get laid off are going to be living the dream, collecting severance, and getting another high-paying job next week, personally, I just don't think that's the case. I talked about the website the other day, layoffs.fyi. Check it out. Every day they list all the recent layoffs. There were a flurry of them on, I think it was January 18th, but even yesterday, January 19th. Swiggy, 600 workers laid off, 10% of the workforce. WeWork, another 300 workers laid off. I think that's like their third round of layoffs. Hubilo, 115 workers laid off. That's 35% of their workforce. Riot Games laid off 46. And we had 4 other companies that had undisclosed numbers of how many people or the percentage of the company that they laid off. But Fandom, layoffs. Mudafi, layoffs. Personalis, layoffs. Wallbox, layoffs. And that brings us to the next story. These aren't tech layoffs, but CNN had an article. The party is over. What are you still doing here? Party City, the largest party supply store in the country, has filed for bankruptcy. That one kind of surprised me, right? Like, I wouldn't think that they would be as affected by everything going on. I guess maybe a lot of the stuff that they sell is maybe companies having office parties and buying party supplies. A lot of people aren't in the office, but I would still think people are having weddings, people are having parties. But Party City is bankrupt. We're likely going to see Bed Bath & Beyond bankrupt any day now as well. Let's talk a little bit about rates. So the Fed's Governor Brainerd said he sees high rates ahead. The Fed won't waver in bringing down inflation. We continue to see this narrative that the Fed's going to pivot, the Fed's going to change their mind, they're going to realize they've gone too far, too fast, and they're going to either stop raising rates or start lowering rates. It's not going to happen. Jay Powell has been clear about this. We now have Brainerd saying he sees high rates ahead, and that the Fed will not crack. They won't waver in bringing down inflation. The Fed's Williams, another Fed member, says that the Fed needs more rate rises to cool inflation. And we have Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan saying that the Fed will raise rates above 6% because there's still a lot of inflation to cool down. People expect a pivot. Not only is a pivot not going to happen, but on the off chance that a pivot did happen before at least the end of 2023, if not, well into 2024. I think that means things are very bad. The economy would be in dire condition, and I don't think lowering rates would do much to help it. So if you do see a pivot happen in 2023, realize things are likely going to get pretty ugly. I thought this was kind of entertaining. Morgan Stanley CEO, he must not be part of the elite. He must not be part of the club. He came out the other day and said, let's be honest, Davos is an echo chamber with everybody repeating back to each other what they heard from the last person. The Davos meeting was going on in Switzerland last week. I don't know if it wrapped up yesterday or if it still continues on through the end of this week. Basically all the elites in the world, politicians, former politicians, CEOs, they all get together and have a big circle jerk about how they're going to save society. They talk about global warming as they're all flying in on their private jets and as their, huge mansions at home are making a bigger carbon footprint than you will in your entire lifetime, but they're going to lecture you about climate change. In France, we have over 1 million people protesting in the streets. I believe France recently raised their retirement age to, I want to say, 64. And just a week ago, they were in the streets protesting over, inflation and the increases in pricing. France has a lot of protests. They are not scared to let the government know that they aren't happy with them, but this is rarely covered in the U.S. media. You guys probably hadn't heard about that one. The U.S. is finalizing another $2.6 billion aid package to Ukraine, and I forget if it was New Zealand or Germany, but one of these countries had said that they'll support Ukraine for the next 15 years. The U.S. has given I think in total it's probably coming over $200 million. Just in the last year, we've given over billion. Just in the past year, we've given over $50 billion in aid to Ukraine. We have crumbling infrastructure at home. We have cities that don't have clean drinking water. Americans are struggling and suffering, and yet we continue to pour more money into Ukraine. We don't have money, right? Like, we've just reached our debt ceiling. How long is this going to keep up for? It's absolutely crazy. Let's see. What else do we have? Tech workers. Okay, so people online say, okay, so we talked about that. Okay, so people are celebrating that mortgage rates are 6.15%. The media is having a big party that mortgage rates dropped slightly. And you can have high rates, right? Like, historically, the rates we have right now aren't that high. But historically, the home prices that we have normally also aren't this high. You had a house that, in some markets that 2019, just a couple years ago, was selling for $300,000. It's now selling for $900,000. This is not normal. Again, the media was celebrating the other day that mortgage apps are up 26.5%. Oh my gosh, but nobody's really mentioning. If you go to Google News and search something about the stat about KB home builders and how 68% of new home builds are being canceled, that's almost 7 in 10 people who were considering buying a new home are now backing out. You're not seeing that story get a lot of coverage. Why? Because if new home builds wind up crashing, then all of a sudden that becomes the comps, and secondhand homes or existing home prices will fall as well, and the entire economy will crash. So you really see the media kind of ignoring how 7 in 10 new home builds are being canceled. We have Bank of America's CEO saying consumers are in good shape. Over 20 million people couldn't pay their utility bills last month. Over 50% of restaurants can't pay their rent. Over 43% of small businesses can't pay their rent. The average car payment is over $700. 15% of all cars bought in 2022 have over $1,000 payment. People are taking on credit card debt at levels we've never seen before. Credit card interest rates are not at levels we've never seen, but are incredibly high. And you really believe that the consumer is still strong. Jamie Dimon had previously said that the consumer will be broke by midsummer. I would argue that the consumer is already broke. Things are only running right now because people have their credit cards. Nordstrom, which is an incredibly popular store, saw sales sink saw their stock price sink after weak holiday sales. They also said they had to do too many markdowns to attract customers. Remember how just a couple months ago we were hearing, oh my gosh, it's a record Black Friday. This was a record holiday season. And I kind of called BS on that. Now we're hearing Nordstrom, it's only one retailer, but we're hearing Nordstrom say that holiday sales were weak. Here's kind of a crazy story. So Discover's stock price plunges after people learned about a charge-off forecast. Credit card debt is at all-time highs. The average credit card rate is at 19.03%, and charge-offs are expected to be 5%. That there's going to be massive losses on loans from consumer banks. Let's see, made terrible loans for okay, and look at these banks. It's not just credit cards. They made terrible loans on overpriced homes, overpriced RVs, overpriced boats, overpriced cars. And I believe the normal, I think I forgot to put it in my notes here, but I believe Discover's normal, and Discover is a credit card company who caters to low income and middle income people, people with maybe not necessarily the best credit, but I believe their charge-offs are normally about 1.8% or something like that. Their charge-offs are going to be 5%. Let's see, bad omen for the economy. Article from MarketWatch said that Americans ate out less over the holidays in both November and December. These should be busy months. Normally around the holidays, people are getting together with friends and family. People are out and about shopping. Maybe you're out at the mall shopping and you decide to grab some dinner with your family at Ruby Tuesdays, or Bennigan's or Applebee's or whatever. A lot of, at workplaces, at companies, a lot of people, let's go get some drinks for happy hour. Let's have a Christmas party. Normally around the holidays, people eating out and going to bars and things like that should be picking up. And we actually saw less people eating out and spending at restaurants and bars over the holidays. Netflix's CEO has stepped down. He's still going to remain with the company. But Netflix actually recently had some good numbers. They picked up 7.66 million paid subscribers, which was more than Wall Street expected. But should that really be a surprise? Look at the number of prime age males, 18 to 54, sitting out of the workforce. What do they have to do but sit at home and watch Netflix? I had a story about the BBC having a cardiologist on, kind of a sensitive story, so I'm not going to cover that one. But if you guys want to Google something about, maybe you don't even want to Google it, maybe you want to like Yandex it or something like that. But BBC cardiologist interview, kind of interesting. So I saw yesterday there were articles that Alex Baldwin was finally going to be charged over the charged with involuntary manslaughter over the shooting on the set of the Rust movie. Weird that it took so long to happen. Yesterday, the rumors were that he was going to be charged. I believe the DA for whatever city that is, I think it was somewhere in New Mexico or something like that. But the DA actually came out and said he is going to be charged. So Alex Baldwin is going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter over the shooting on that movie set. Let's see here. We covered layoffs. I saw Jamie Morgan came out yesterday and said, Jamie Dimon came out yesterday and said that Bitcoin is just a hyped up fraud. It's been weird to see him swing back and forth between Bitcoin's a scam. No, I kind of like Bitcoin. We're buying Bitcoin for our institutional clients. No, Bitcoin's a scam again. So yesterday I talked about the Instagram Meta story, that Instagram and Meta were going to allow toplessness on Instagram. I was actually incorrect about that. Brian Phobos brought that up. And I also saw some more articles come out. Initially, it was reported that, men and women could be topless on Instagram because you need to be topless to, quote unquote, express yourself. But it turns out, no, only men and trans people can be topless on Instagram. Women cannot. It's weird that, we don't really want to identify gender or consider people to be a certain gender. Yet at the same time, women aren't allowed to be topless on Instagram. And what if a woman has boobs, but she identifies as a man? Can she then put her boobs on Instagram? I'll be curious to see how all that plays out. Zero Hedge article yesterday, the U.S. consumer has cracked. They talked about Discover plunges after shocking charge-off forecast. The combination of record high credit card debt and record high credit card interest is nothing short of catastrophic for both the U.S. economy and the strapped consumer who has no choice but to keep buying on credit while hoping next month's bill will somehow not come. Unfortunately, it will, and at some point in the near future, this will also translate into massive losses for U.S. consumer banks. That's when Powell will finally panic. Had another note, but we talked about this. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings gives up his role as CEO, and that's what he'll do. He'll remain as the chairman. I thought this was kind of interesting. I don't know how many of you guys grew up watching Boy Meets World, but Boy Meets World star Ben Savage is going to be running for Congress, and he has his eye on the seat of Adam Schiff. Let's see. Home builders. Okay, so home builders are pricing new projects at 8% less than existing homes or recently finished homes, i.e. they're essentially telling people to wait. The housing market is going to continue to come down even more. And another thing, the credits that sellers are giving to buyers is kind of covering up some of these price drops. We are seeing huge price drops in a lot of cities. A lot of markets have seen 30% declines in housing prices. But another thing that we're seeing is the vast majority of sellers are having to offer credits. So we'll pay your down payment. We'll pay your closing costs. We'll do these repairs. We'll get you a new carpet, whatever it may be. These repairs, these credits could wind up being in the tens of thousands of dollars. But because it's not actually the price of the home that's dropping, it's just a credit being given, it kind of hides a further drop in the housing market. So if you see that a housing market has seen a 30% drop, if you factor in the concessions that sellers are giving to buyers, it's very possible that it's really 35% or even 40% drops that we're seeing. Let's see. U.S. government sources say that the U.S. military may help Ukraine strike Crimea. So we're slowly seeing that the U.S. is quite possibly going to be getting involved in another war. We just left Afghanistan disgraced, and now we're going to start a war over in Ukraine. The state of Florida and Governor DeSantis had a win over BlackRock. You guys have heard about ESG scores. When basically a company like BlackRock will decide how to invest a pension or invest retirement funds, and rather than making the best investments, something that they do is, okay, they'll invest in a company that's quote unquote green. They'll invest in a company that's vocal about gay rights and trans issues. If my money's being invested, I want my money being invested for the best return. I don't want my money being invested in quote unquote woke companies. There's actually an ETF that came out a while back called YALL, Y-A-L-L. And basically this is an ETF that only invests in, that basically specifically doesn't invest in woke companies. I bought a little bit of it a couple months ago. I'm not sure if it's up or down. But Florida and Governor DeSantis had a little bit of a victory over BlackRock. They were threatening to pull their pension investments with BlackRock, and I guess BlackRock has agreed to not use ESG scores when investing Florida pensions. Let's see, Zero Hedge article, auto crisis worsens as delinquencies reach 2009 levels. Auto loans 2 months in default jumped 26% from this time last year. So another article, The Great Dropout, 1.4 million kids left public school last year. And the reason that kids are being pulled out of school by their parents vary. Some parents didn't want their kids in school having to wear masks. They said, my kid's not going to be in a mask 8 hours a day. I'm pulling them out of school. Other parents had the exact opposite reaction and said, I don't feel the school is doing enough to keep kids safe and isolate kids and keep kids in masks, so I'm pulling my kids out of school. And then other people feel that schools have been radicalized. When you look at a state like, I believe it's Oregon or Washington, where your son can be dressed up like a girl at school. The school will provide him with girls' clothes, and they'll hide it from you. The school can even provide your child hormone blockers without telling you. I think maybe schools should focus on education as opposed to a lot of the weird social issues they're focusing on. So we talked about the media is ignoring the housing cancellation story. Think about what a big part of the economy is housing and how much consumption housing drives. So not only do you have truck drivers who are delivering things to home builds, not only when a home is built do they have to order wood flooring, tile, sinks, all this type of stuff. Think about all the people that are employed by the housing industry, mortgage professionals, realtors, people who work at closing companies. But even beyond that, think about all the consumption that housing drives. When you buy a new house, if you move from an apartment to a house or a condo to a house, well, now you need a rake, you need a lawnmower, you need a snowblower, you need a hose and a sprinkler to water the backyard. Maybe you need some new kitchen appliances. Like, think about when you buy a home, think about all the other things that you have to buy. You have to buy furniture to furnish this home, and think about how much consumption the housing market drives. And when housing continues to dry up, all that consumption is going to dry up as well. Let's see, near all-time highs in construction. Nobody wants to. Okay, so retail goes. Let's see, retail sales go lower with housing starts. Retailers and wholesalers are loaded with inventory and no buyers to buy it. Manufacturing has plummeted to the lowest level since May of 2020. I saw an article yesterday. Bill Clinton was paid $250,000 to sit on stage with SBF, and they were kind of making the argument that Bill Clinton essentially gave some credibility to SBF, which kind of helped him in duping investors. And then the last note I had was about the Party City story, which we had already covered. So that's today's news. As always, I appreciate it. It helps me in the algorithms. If you guys drop a comment, would love to hear your thoughts, comments, and opinions on all the stories we covered in today's video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. And if you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. That's the video for today. That's all I got. I may or may not wind up putting out a video on Saturday and or Sunday, but at the very least, I will catch you guys on Monday. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.